Hello and welcome to Matchday Live on LCFC Radio. We're live at Carrow Road for Friday night football in the Premier League.
Shoots and scores! Harvey Barnes equalises!
Bottom club Norwich host third place Leicester City, who are looking to win to secure their spot in the top four.
Ben Chilwell scores! And Leicester lead!
It's Norwich City against Leicester City, and you can hear it all right here on Matchday Live.
And Didi hits in! Saved by Kasper Schmeichel! Oh, what an absolute cracker from Harvey Barnes!
Your place for all the big moments. You're listening to Matchday Live on LCFC Radio.
The big team news, no Jamie Vardy for Leicester City, not even on the bench. He felt a pain in his calf, has had a scan, and it's been confirmed he has a low-grade injury. Should be back for next week, but not available tonight. There is a switch from 3 at the back to 4 as well this evening, and 3 alterations to the starting 11 from Manchester City last weekend. Hamza Chowdhury returns from suspension, Ayoze Perez comes in, and Kelechi Iheanacho leads the line in place of Vardy. Wilfred Ndidi returns to the matchday squad and is on the bench. So the Foxes side, Kasper Schmeichel in goal, the back 4, Ricardo, Soyuncu, Evans and Chilwell, Pratt, Chowdhury and Maddison against his former club in midfield, with Perez and Barnes either side of Iheanacho. On the bench for Leicester, Ward, Justin, Morgan, Gray, Tielemans, Albrighton and Ndidi. One big change for Norwich, Emiliano Buendia, who has surprisingly been left on the bench for the last 3 games, is back in the 11. And the January signing Lucas Rupp drops to the bench from the 11 that started in the loss at Wolves last time out for them. They'll go 4-2-3-1, Tim Krul in goal, a back 4 of young Max Aarons, Grant Hanley the captain, Ben Godfrey and Jamal Lewis. Kenny McLean and Alex Tettey are the holding midfielders, with Buendia, Andre Duda and the highly rated Todd Cantwell behind top scorer Timo Pukki. On the bench for Norwich, Michael McGovern, Rock, Mario Vrancic, Marco Stiepermann, Tom Tribal, Josip Trimic and Adam Ido. But for Leicester City, Dan, no Jamie Vardy.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, welcome to Matchday Live here at Carrow Road. The Leicester fans who have made this long journey to Norfolk will be hoping for 3 points on the road this evening. I'm Dan Bates, and joining me for Matchday Live for all the build-up and then full match commentary is former Leicester City and then for a very brief spell, former Norwich City striker Tony Cottee. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, Dan. A whole 11 games I think it was for Norwich, but I played 100 for Leicester, so yeah, a few more games for Leicester.
When you look back at these types of games, I mean, Norwich, you only spent 10 games here. I'm sure they weren't bad games for you or any sense, but is there no real connection for you in this club then?
Not really, no. I think, I actually left Leicester to come to Norwich. That was the move that I made. I went from the Premier League dropped down to the Championship to come here under Brian Hamilton, and yeah, no, I've got fond memories. It's a very, very good club. It's a really nice family club. Very, very well run club, Dan, as well. You know, they don't overspend, they don't go mad in signing £50 million players when they can't afford it. It's always been run properly. You know, they've got a good board of directors here. They've got a very good manager who you've got to say has done a fantastic job for them. So yeah, no, it's a club I've got a little bit of affection for, but I've got a huge affection for Leicester.
Absolutely, and you'll be cheering on the Foxes, I'm sure, this evening. And how do you see the game going itself?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Norwich play, because, you know, I watched them play many times over the last 2 or 3 years. I think they've only really got one way to play, and that is to attack. You know, I think in football you've always got to play to your strengths, Dan, and the strengths for Norwich are getting the ball forward, getting it into Timo Pukki, getting Cantwell on the ball, getting Buendia, who's a good player, getting involved. You know, their downside, if you like, is their defence, and I think that's where we can exploit that. You know, I think we're looking for a typical Leicester away performance, if you like. I think, you know, absorb the pressure that you expect Norwich to put them under in the opening few minutes. You know, we're they're the home team, and they'll take the game to Leicester. And you know, as they sort of settle in and get more into the game, then I think we will see Leicester breaking very quickly. But obviously there's a big blow up front for Leicester, and that, you know, that will cause a few problems from Leicester's point of view.
That is the big news, isn't it, Tony, this evening, is no Jamie Vardy. As we heard from Chris there, he felt a pain in his calf. He's had a scan. It's a low-grade injury. He's not available tonight, but he will be back next week. So it seems like it's a bit of a precautionary in leaving Jamie Vardy out, because he is such a vital player for Leicester, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak through experience with these sort of injuries, because, you know, Jamie is, 33 now, very similar age, or if not the same age as what I was at when I was at Leicester, and I had a lot of problems with my calf muscle. And I think when you're an explosive player, listen, obviously when I was at Leicester, I wasn't as quick as I was when I was at West Ham when I was an 18-year-old, but, you know, I still was pretty quick. And a lot of your game is based on explosive pace, and, you know, that first sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 yards where you try and outrun the defender, and that certainly applies to Jamie Vardy. We know that because Jamie's so quick. And, you know, if you feel that slightest of twinges, anything at all, they've done exactly the right thing. Because if you don't do that, Dan, if you say no, we need to play and we've got to win the game, etc., then you can run the risk of playing Jamie Vardy. He then pulls his calf properly, and if you do that, which I did when I was at Leicester, you're talking at least 6 weeks out. So it's better to have 6 days out rather than 6 weeks off, and I think that's probably where they're going with this one. The fact he's not on the bench tells you everything.
I guess then the way that maybe you can look at it from the other players' point of view, the way that Harvey Barnes, Jose Perez, Kelechi Iheanacho will be looking at this and saying this is a chance for them to go out there and prove that Leicester don't need Jamie Vardy as much as some people say that they do. This is their opportunity to step up here against the side that are bottom of the Premier League.
Absolutely, and particularly Kelechi as well, like Iheanacho up front, who I'm a big fan of. I've got to say, I think he's an excellent finisher, and it's a great opportunity for him, you know, to play in a game. You're playing against the bottom team, and if I'm Iheanacho, I'm thinking to myself, you know what, there's goals here tonight, and there's nothing better as a forward than scoring the goals, and, you know, he'll be out to prove a point. And you're quite right, you know, there's been a lot of talk over the last 7-8 years about Jamie Vardy and, you know, what they like without Jamie Vardy. Well, we'll have a little look tonight and we'll see exactly what Leicester are like without Jamie Vardy. But there's players out there good enough to step in for Jamie and to score the goals that will win Leicester the game.
I think what you have to look at as well, particularly with Kelechi Iheanacho, when you look at the games that he's played this season for Leicester, invariably he's been involved in the games, whether it's scoring or getting assists. And you're having a look down there at his scoring record. There's more games that he's been involved in and scored in than he hasn't, which proves there clearly is a player in there.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I really don't. You know, the problem that he's got, and this applies to the players at Tottenham as well, is that when you've got a fantastic number 9, as in Harry Kane or Jamie Vardy, it's very difficult to attract lots and lots of forwards to a football club, because quite simply they're not going to want to play second fiddle to the main man, which is what happens. So, you know, Iheanacho's had to be patient, he's had to bide his time, but you can only say when he's come on, or when he started the game, he's been involved in the action. And there's been at least a couple of games I can think of where he's been heavily involved and he scored goals and laid goals on, and I think he's an excellent player, I really do. But, you know, you want to play your football. That's the thing. You don't want to be known as a super sub. You want to play your football. You want to start the games. The biggest problem he's got, and we know this, is that Jamie is the number 9 at Leicester. When he's fit, he plays, and that's the biggest problem he's had. But, you know, I think he will come into the team tonight and he'll be looking to get goals.
Another man that will be hoping to do exactly that is 22-year-old Harvey Barnes. He was a special guest on this week's episode of Matchday -2, and the Leicester forward says that despite being involved in over 10 goals this season, there's still room for improvement.
I'm still very young. I'm still learning a lot in the game. You know, the manager's helping me a lot with that. There's a lot tactically that I can learn, and, you know, still me as a player, I think probably still got a lot more developing to do. So yeah, I feel like for me, you know, it's been a good season so far, but like you say, there is still a lot to come for me, I think.
It's good to hear that, Tony, isn't it, from Harvey Barnes. Incidentally, if you want to watch back that episode of Matchday -2, you can do so anytime on lcfc.com/TV. But he's clearly hungry. He clearly wants to improve. He's scored 4 goals, got 7 assists. That's in the Premier League alone. He's also scored in the FA Cup as well. For a 22-year-old that's playing only his first full season in the top flight, that's a good return, but clearly there's a hunger that he wants more.
Yeah, you could tell that by the interview, couldn't you? And you know, I think it's always good to hear a young player who's saying, you know, I can still learn, I'm still learning, I'm hungry, I want more, I want to do more, I want to create more, I want to score more. I think it's always nice to hear that. What you don't want to hear as a 22-year-old is, yeah, I played really well this week and I've done it. You don't want them blowing their own trumpet. You want them to be respectful. You want them to realise where they are in the game. And listen, there's no doubt for me that Harvey Barnes is a top young player, one of the top young players in the country. And when I say young player, I normally talk about young players as in under the age of 25. And he's up there. If you picked a team of young English players that are under the age of 25 in the Premier League, no doubt he would be in that team. You know, he's proved that. He's been consistently really good. And what I like about his game and what he's brought to his game, particularly this year, Dan, is that end product, because that's the key thing. When you play wide and you're on the flank, sometimes you can be a bit left out of the game. Sometimes the ball could be all down the right-hand side. You're on the left, you don't get a kick. But when he's got on the ball this season, when he's been involved in things this season, I think he's been excellent. And that, as I say, that final end product's been there. Whether that's the final pass, the final cross, the final shot, he's delivered all that this year, and he's been vital to this Leicester team. And it is a fantastic Leicester team, no doubt about that. But he's a vital cog in this team.
Something that Matt Elliott was alongside Harvey for the show during the week, and he said he loves seeing the fear in defenders' eyes, in fullbacks' eyes, when Harvey Barnes gets the ball on that left-hand side, because he's fast, he's powerful, he's tall, and he's strong as well. And clearly there is an end product there. So on paper, if you were to draw, if you like, the perfect wide player, he's got the physique, he's got everything there, hasn't he, to go on and be a very special player.
He has, yeah. And I think, again, in the modern player, you are looking for everything. I think, you know, in the era when I played, I know it was a long time ago when I first started, but you know, you looked at the wingers and they didn't have to be the all-round complete player. In other words, they could be a fantastic winger, and perhaps defensively you get absolutely nothing out of them. They could also be brilliant for 6 games on the trot, and then they wouldn't play well for 6 games. So that was how it used to be for a winger. But if you look at the modern day winger or wide player as such has to be able to do everything. Exactly what you said. You know, you've got to be strong, you've got to be quick, you've got to be able to cross the ball, you've got to be able to finish, but you've also got to be able to defend as well. And you know, his combination with Ben Chilwell is fantastic. They've obviously got a great understanding. I don't know what their relationship is like off the pitch, but I'm guessing it's pretty close and they get on really well, because they are 2 really, really special young players.
Yeah, it's an exciting night for Leicester from that point of view. You brought up Ben Chilwell, Harvey Barnes obviously on that left-hand side, Hamza Chowdhury in the midfield. That's 3 academy graduates starting in the Premier League on a Friday night in a huge Premier League game. And that says everything you need to know about where Leicester City are at the moment as a club.
Well, it does. It tells you a lot of things, really, because it tells you that, firstly, you've got the talented players, because those players are performing. You know, they're not in the team because they're young players and we want to see young players in the Leicester team. They're in the team on merit. They're in the team because they are very good players, and they have consistently, particularly the Chilwell and Harvey Barnes. You know, Chowdhury just come into the team more recently, but they're consistently performing at the top level in English football. So you've got that. You've also got a manager that quite clearly believes in young players. If you look at the players, you know, the Tielemans and, you know, the other boys that are in this squad, Soyuncu, they're young boys, you know, and the manager obviously believes in that. And then if you then add into the fact that, you know, the group of fans that are going to be there, there's not too many in there at the moment, but there will be a huge following the club tonight. And those fans love to identify with the young players that come through at football club. There's nothing better, whatever club you're at, to say he's one of our own, that he came through the academy, and all that hard work that all the guys, all the youth team coaches put in to produce these players. It pays off, and you see a young kid come into the team and develop, and most importantly keep his place in the team. And that's what them fans will love. They love the star players, but they love the academy players as well.
Yeah, Tony there referencing the Leicester City fans. There are a number of them already here inside Carrow Road. They're in that side directly opposite us, one of those side stand away ends, those Leicester City fans. But back in December, it was the Norwich City away fans that were celebrating at King Power Stadium as they came away from Leicester with a 1-1 draw.
It's a warm welcome to King Power Stadium on a bitterly cold December afternoon in Leicestershire. Second top takes on second bottom in the Premier League in front of another sellout crowd here at King Power Stadium as the Foxes take on the Canaries. Cantwell showing off his skills and carrying the ball into the Leicester half before Ndidi comes to take it from him and starts off another Leicester attack. Ricardo, great football work from him as well. Maddison, space just inside the Norwich half, moved on to Tielemans, who comes down the inside left position, checks onto his right foot and shot, and Krul lost it for a moment. It bounced off the post and Taylor rolled back into his arms. Brilliant football from Leicester. It nearly broke the deadlock. Tielemans, who's not scored in his last 6 games, taking strike from outside of the area. Clint Buxton, a gut to join him on this near side. He's good skill, and it's back to Aarons again inside the 18-yard area, across the face of goal, and somehow Pukki from close range couldn't get the required contact, and it's drifted wide of the post. But Norwich should be in front, and that was a gilt-edged opportunity. Sends his clearance to the far side, drops on the halfway line, comes off the chest of Johnny Evans. Falls into Norwich possession. This is Buendia, who has time and space, and he's picked out the pass to Pukki, who's in on goal and has given Norwich the lead. A very cool finish into the bottom corner after the playmaker Buendia was given the time and space to pick out Norwich's leading goal scorer. That's his 9th of the season, his 3rd in his last 4 games. The Canaries are celebrated in the away section. Maddison receiving a warm welcome from the fans that he used to play for us. It's an out-swinging corner of Vardy at the near post. Keeps his goal-scoring run rolling, and more importantly finds an equaliser for Leicester City. Maddison with a delightfully floated corner, drifted into the near post area. Vardy making his way to the near post, and a glancing header beyond Tim Krul. Maddison, lovely ball over the top. Great take by Vardy. He's round Krul. He's on the outside of the 18-yard area. And it's a goal kick as it rolls into the side netting. Vardy has kicked away one of the television microphones. Godfrey collided with the post as he made sure that one didn't sneak in. Maddison will take the corner. An out swinger from the right. Evans hands on hips, ready to make his move. Soonchu just behind him. Maddison's delivery to the far post. Chilwell was up there, nearly fell for Chilwell again. He's gone down holding his ankle. Play continues. Vardy back to goal. Turned and swiveled and hooked a ball goalwards, but Krul got a touch right on the post. I don't think it would have crept in. Krul touching it away for another corner. It's Maddison, corner of the box, laid off to Chilwell. It's a better cross. Godfrey almost scored an own goal. Stuck out a boot, it could have gone anywhere. He took the sting out of the ball, it just bounced towards the goal line, and he reacted quickly enough to whack it away before it went over the line. But it is a Leicester corner. Maddison, is this the moment? It's clear. It's Barnes through a crowd of players, everyone raising their arms, trying not to get a touch. And it's out for a goal kick.
All the games, all the goals, and all the big moments. You're listening to LCFC Radio.
Looking back at that game, Tony, obviously it was disappointing from a Leicester point of view. It ended their run of 8 straight wins in the Premier League. Jamie Vardy's run of scoring, well, we thought it had continued, obviously with the Tim Krul own goal, but it hadn't. It did go down as being against the goalkeeper. But a disappointing afternoon from a Leicester point of view for that reason. But Norwich on the day were very, very good at King Power Stadium.
Yeah, they was. Yeah, I remember the game, and they was good. And I think they've got that in them. You know, they've got enough talented players in their team to go to an away game and to cause problems like what they did at the King Power Stadium. You know, the likes of Pukki, I've mentioned already. Buendia is a good player. Todd Cantwell's a good player. So going forward, they've got players that can do that and can hurt you on a match day. And they made it really difficult for Leicester. And it was a disappointing result. It was a great result for Norwich, but it was a disappointing result for Leicester. There's no doubt about that.
Do you think it's a good thing almost that happened at King Power Stadium earlier in the season? So the Leicester, firstly the fans, and then obviously the players, come here tonight knowing that this isn't third in the Premier League with umpteen amount of points against bottom of the Premier League with only 18 points. This is 2 teams that are both very capable of producing great displays.
Yeah, without a doubt, there's no doubt about that. And I think as a player as well, I mean, the one thing as a player you do think of, I think as the season goes on, and you know, sometimes as a player you get a bit wrapped up in your own sort of individual games and stuff in it. But I think the one thing that you do look at is you look at what happened in the previous fixture. You know, when you played at home, and you know, if things didn't go quite right, and obviously they didn't go quite right for Leicester, you want to put that right down, and I think that's important. So the players will be thinking that they'll be in that dressing room, and maybe it won't be the topic of the team talk from Brendan Rodgers, but it will be. Do you know what? Like, you know, don't forget, lads, they gave us a good game at the King Power Stadium. You know, do not think that you're going to turn up here and just because you're in third place and they're bottom of the league, you're going to roll them over and you're going to beat them 4-0. Football does not work like that, and you know, Norwich will be bang up for this game, and if anything, they'll be in that dressing room, the home dressing room, saying, look, we've got a draw at the King Power, you know, we can beat them here.
I think that the point that you're making really is encompassed, and listen, I'm by no means comparing drawing 1-1 at home to Norwich to losing 9-0 at home, but Southampton coming to King Power Stadium knew what had happened earlier in the season. They wanted their revenge, if you like, and to an extent they got it winning at King Power Stadium. Absolutely, and it happens in football, but that's your professional pride as a footballer. You know, there's a player, that's what you need to do. You need to be, you can't just be wrapped up in your own world and not realise what's going on. You need to be aware of things like that. And when you know, they got an absolute stuffing, didn't they, Southampton? And it was no surprise really when they turned that around. And you know, you can't compare, as you quite rightly say, but you know, the Leicester boys would have been hurt with that result, I think, because it was 2 points dropped, and come the end of the season, that could be a vital 2 points where really it's a game. You should be beating Norwich at home. I know it's not easy. No games are easy in the Premier League, but you should be beating Norwich at home. They are bottom of the league. You should be beating them. Leicester only drew the game, and that would have been a big disappointment. So this is a really good chance tonight to put that right. And if they do beat them here at Carrow Road, Leicester will go 12 points clear of fifth-placed Manchester United. And Harvey Barnes says the Foxes are coming here hopeful of all 3 points.
For us, we'll be going there full of confidence. We know it's not going to be an easy game. You know, obviously they're in a tough situation at the minute, so they're going to be full of fight, and they'll be looking to put as tough a test as they can. But I think for us, we'll be looking to take the game to them, and hopefully with the performance we can get the result.
How important is it, and on these nights, I know again looking back to that night at Southampton, we talked about this before the kick-off, particularly when it's an evening game and maybe the conditions aren't great, to be right on it from the moment that first whistle goes. I suppose that's important for any game, isn't it, regardless of the conditions, but even more so, as Harvey was saying there, they'll be right on it, they'll be showing fight, they're bottom of the league, but they'll be showing fight. So how important is it from a Leicester point of view that everyone is right on it from that first whistle?
I think it's a case of trying to get everything right and everything in place, and I think that happens from the moment you arrive at the football ground, and I'm guessing that Leicester would have got here around about 6:30 tonight. And when you turn up at a football match and you get off that coach, you've got to start switching on, and you've got to come out of your zone. And I know a lot of the players nowadays, they've got their headphones on and listening to the music that I can't really appreciate, I've got to be honest, Dan, but you know, they're in their own little world and they get off. But you've got to start switching on, you've got to start focusing on the game. It's a word you hear a lot from Brendan Rodgers, which is focus, and you have to focus on what you're trying to achieve tonight. And then you then got to come out, you've got to get your warm-up right, you've got to switch on in terms of the warm-up, and the main thing is when that game kicks off and you look at the conditions are absolutely fantastic tonight. It's a lovely pitch, always been a nice pitch here at Norwich. It's drizzling the rain, which makes it's going to be great from a forwards point of view. The ball's going to zip across the pitch, and Leicester have got to be switched on tonight. From the moment the referee, Craig Paulson, blows that whistle, they've got to be switched on and ready to play. Now, I don't mean gung-ho and charging forward, trying to get a goal in the first. I'm not talking about that, but just be switched on. And if you concede a corner in the first minute, you make sure you know you're marking and you're not sort of daydreaming, and then all of a sudden you're a goal behind after 2 minutes. It's the worst feeling in the world. You know, it can happen, and it does happen, obviously, in football, because players are only human. But it's important from Leicester's point of view tonight. So we see the Norwich players coming out for that warm-up I was just talking about. It's important from Leicester's point of view that they are fully focused tonight, because if they're not, Dan, they will get turned over here. This is a Norwich team fighting for their lives and good enough to beat Leicester. There's no doubt about that if Leicester don't perform.
Well, getting his players psyched up is something certainly that Brendan Rodgers has done this season away from home. Only Liverpool and Manchester City have earned more away points than Leicester's 27 in the Premier League this season, just as the Foxes players come out onto the pitch for their warm-ups. What does that stat and those points tell you, though, about Leicester?
Well, it tells you that Leicester what I was just asking for. Can they make that music a bit louder, Dan? Because I can't even hear myself talk about anything else. What it does tell you is that Leicester have been switched on, like what I've said in those away games. They have been focused, and their away performances have been fantastic. We know they had that great run where, you know, they was winning all the Premier League games on the trot. And, you know, I always felt as a player, and I don't think it'll be any different now, I always felt it was easier to win the home matches. When you're at home, you've got the crowd behind you, you're familiar territory, you've got 30-odd thousand Leicester fans and 2,000 away fans. It is easier to get those points. Coming to places like this is where it's hard, but this is where you earn your money. And this is why Leicester are third in the Premier League, because their away performances have been so good.
They've shown professionalism in a lot of those away games. I know another one of the games that you've covered for us was at Selhurst Park, wasn't it? Crystal Palace, that 2-0 win away, which is a place that's always been tough to go to in the Premier League. And they showed a real professionalism that day. It was 0-0 at half-time, but they showed patience, didn't they, to make sure they won that game?
Yeah, they did. And again, that was another performance, completely different to the Southampton game, but that was another performance. It was a professional performance. And, you know, I talk quite a bit about professional performances and being a professional footballer and doing things the right way. And, you know, when you talk about that, you're expecting players just to make the right decisions individually and as a team. And Leicester done that in that Crystal Palace game. It was a thoroughly professional performance. And I think they've got to do something similar here tonight. Yeah, of course, as I said in the preview, I've seen many games here, 3-2s, 4-3s, 5-4s. I've seen all sorts of results here. And I wouldn't be surprised with any result that happens here tonight, because Norwich are that type of team. But I also won't be too disappointed, Dan, if it's a boring 1-0 victory to Leicester, because football in the professional game is, whether you like it or not, it is totally and utterly about results. And that is the most important thing for Leicester tonight. Get the 3 points, because you've already spoken about that 9-point gap between Leicester and Manchester United. If they can make that a 12-point gap, Manchester United going to Goodison Park at the weekend will not be easy, and you might just get a little bit more breathing space. Yes, 9 points is a wonderful cushion, but that can easily turn around. If you get stuffed here tonight, Man United win at Everton, all of a sudden, you know, it's not 9 points, it's 6 points, and they're breathing down your neck. And Leicester deserve Champions League football, but they've really got to finish things off with, 10 or 11 games left of the season.
And the fixtures coming up for the Foxes look relatively complementary, so Harvey Barnes believes that a result tonight could be the springboard for a good run of results. Well, we thought we were getting Harvey Barnes there, but we haven't, Tony. If I just read out the fixtures that Leicester have coming up, they've got Aston Villa, Watford, Brighton, Everton, Crystal Palace before they go to the Emirates and Arsenal. That is a relatively nice looking run of fixtures, isn't it? I know, as we've already talked about, there are no easy games, but if you wanted a little run or a little chunk of fixtures like that, Leicester will be looking at that thinking that's where they can pick up some really vital points heading into the end of the season.
Well, you've reeled off some really good fixtures there. You know, I obviously knew the next couple, but you know, going even beyond that, there's some games where you're looking to get points down, and you know, it's so vital with these games towards the end of the season. But you know, the one thing that we've learnt over the years, and the one thing we all know, is you don't take any Premier League game for granted. Go back to my old manager, the wonderful Martin O'Neill, getting really, really excited about one of the games that we played once, and it was one of the most awful 0-0 games, and he came in after that game saying, what a fantastic point that was, boys. And we're sort of looking at the manager as if what's he on about? Like, you know, it was a boring 0-0 draw. But Martin O'Neill knew that any point in the Premier League is absolutely vital. And that's the way they've got to look at it. They've got to treat these games like that. And the teams they're playing as well, invariably, they're going to be fighting relegation. They're going to be going for European football. And there are no easy games in the Premier League. You know, in many other leagues around Europe, Dan, you would look at this game, you say, do you know what, Norwich, bottom of the table, you know, Leicester a third, 2-3-0, easy victory. Football doesn't work that way, you know, and Norwich will give Leicester a real game tonight.
Well, we can get Harvey Barnes now. He says that a win this evening could set them up now for the final stretch of the Premier League.
For us, we'll be going there full of confidence. We know it's not going to be an easy game. You know, obviously, they're in a tough situation at the minute, so they're going to be full of fight, and you know, they'll be looking to put as tough a test as they can. But I think for us, we'll be looking to take the game to them, and hopefully with the performance we can get the result.
Well, as we've talked about, I mean, before that run of Premier League games, there's the game against Birmingham in the FA Cup on Wednesday at King Power Stadium. It's obviously the only competition Leicester are left in this season. Hopefully this time next season maybe we'll be in a couple of more, you never know, with some European football potentially. But it's a good little test at this stage of the season for this young squad to have those other games in other competitions, to almost practice what it's like. You obviously played in a lot of cup competitions alongside Premier League football as well, so how important as a player is it to make sure that you've got all bases covered?
Well, of course it is. You know, I mean, the one thing you want to do as a player, you want to play football, and you know, I mean, you have to train, because if you don't train, you're never going to be fit to be a footballer, obviously. But you train because you're looking forward to the matches. But if you can play matches instead of training, you know, there's a lot of talk about how the players get tired and all that. I disagree, I really do. I don't think it's changed that much. And if you talk to the modern day Premier League player, they will say that they'd rather play matches. And even if that means playing Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, you know, that's what you become a footballer for. You want to play in those games. And yeah, you're right, Dan. You know, there is the potential that Leicester will be involved in at least 6 Champions League games next season, as well as League Cup and FA Cup. But if you're a successful team, if you're in a good team, you want those games. You don't. There's nothing more frustrating than sitting at home watching other teams playing in the competitions. And I include this weekend as well, because obviously the League Cup final is a real frustration to all of us, because we'd all rather this game really have been cancelled and been at Wembley. You know, we'd love to have done that. And it is frustrating, and we'll watch the game on Sunday thinking, if only. And that is the worst feeling as a player, and that's the worst feeling as a fan as well, and if you work for the football club, because it is that horrible if we'd have done this, if we'd have done that. So, you know, it's really important that the players are on their game, get the job done, qualify for Europe, and, you know, if you've got to play lots of games in the Champions League next year, no one is going to be moaning, and certainly the supporters won't be moaning. Champions League football, hopefully, is coming Leicester's way again.
We've got the Norwich players in front of us here at Carrow Road doing their warm-ups. Away to our right-hand side, we can see the Leicester City players and substitutes doing their warm-ups. So let's get a reminder of today's team news with our commentator, Chris Parrott.
Well, one person who's not there is Jamie Vardy, unfortunately, not even on the bench. He has a calf injury, low grade, he's had a scan, and he should be back next week. This is the team. 3 changes from the Manchester City 11. Vardy, one of those to drop out, alongside him Fuchs and Tielemans. In come Chowdhury, back from suspension, Perez and Iheanacho, who leads the line. So Kasper Schmeichel in goal, a back 4. A change in system as well. Ricardo, Soyuncu, Evans and Chilwell, Pratt, Chowdhury and Maddison, the former Norwich man, in midfield, with Perez and Barnes either side of Iheanacho. On the bench for Leicester, Ward, Justin, Morgan, Gray, Tielemans, Albrighton and Wilfred Ndidi. Great to see him back in the Matchday squad. For Norwich, one change from their last game at Wolves. It's a big one. Emi Buendia is back in from the start, having been left on the bench for the last 3 games. Lucas Rupp drops to the substitutes bench. They'll go in a 4-2-3-1 formation with Tim Krul in goal, a back 4 of Max Aarons, Ben Godfrey, the captains Grant Hanley and Jamal Lewis. Kenny McLean and Alex Tettey are the holding midfielders. Ahead of them, it's Buendia on the right, Andre Duda and Todd Cantwell behind top scorer Timu Puki, who of course scored at the King Power Stadium earlier this campaign. On the bench for Norwich, Michael McGovern, the sub-goalkeeper, Rupp, as I mentioned, Mario Vrancic, Marco Stiepermann, Tom Tribal, Josip Drumic and Adam Ido. But the big news for Leicester, no Jamie Vardy tonight with a calf problem.
Thank you very much, Chris. We'll hear from Chris again when he gives us full match commentary of this game here at Carrow Road at 8 o'clock. Before then, though, we'll hear from both managers, Daniel Farke and Brendan Rodgers, and take a closer look at this evening's hosts.
You're listening to LCFC Radio.
A British man who was on board a quarantine cruise ship off the coast of Japan has died from coronavirus. He's the first Briton to die from the disease. Meanwhile, 3 more people have been diagnosed in the UK, taking the total to 19 cases. Boris Johnson says stopping the spread of COVID-19 is now the government's top priority. But the Shadow Health Secretary John Ashworth says he's too late.
The government's broadly had the correct approach by trying to contain the spread of the virus. But clearly, it's not good enough for Boris Johnson to say, we'll have an emergency meeting on Monday. He should be convening that emergency meeting now. He needs to be getting a grip of the situation now.
France has recorded 57 confirmed cases of the virus. It's shutting some schools in the Oise region, north of Paris. A martial arts expert has been jailed for life for murdering a pensioner with a crossbow in Anglesey. Gerald Corrigan was shot after he was tricked into going onto his roof to fix a satellite dish. Motherwell manager Stephen Robinson has been acquitted of assaulting his partner in Edinburgh last year. The 45-year-old was accused of attacking Robin Loughlin on Waverley Bridge before Christmas, something both of them had always denied. Greta Thunberg has told a climate strike march in Bristol that we're being betrayed by world leaders who are failing us.
But we will not back down. And if you feel threatened by that, then I have some very bad news for you. We will not be silenced, because we are the change, and change is coming whether you like it or not.
The 17-year-old also claimed those in power are behaving like children. It's thought tens of thousands of people attended the event and subsequent march through the city. Forecasters say Storm Jorge will bring further heavy rain and strong winds across the country this weekend. Coastal areas could see gusts of up to 70 miles per hour. That's the latest. I'm Elizabeth Secker.
The only place you can listen to every Leicester City match online. This is LCFC Radio.
Yes, welcome back to Matchday Live here on LCFC Radio with me, Dan Bates. Former Leicester City striker Tony Cottee is sat beside me. We're just looking out and seeing the Norwich players warming up in front of us here. Teemu Pukki is still in his full tracksuit and he's just having a bit of a wander around, a saunter around. But I guess when you score the amount of goals that he does, and really he's the focal point of this Norwich team, you can get away with that in a warm-up, can't you, Tony? As you well know.
Of course you can, Dan. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you do in the warm-up. You know, you have to try and prepare properly, but it's all about what you do once that whistle goes and the game kicks off. Listen, I'm a big fan of Teemu Pukki. I think there was, probably quite rightly, there was questions asked, you know, yeah, he scored loads of goals in the Championship, but can he do it in the Premier League? And you know, he's answered all those questions, you know, right from the start of the season where he was banging the goals in. And he's a real threat, he really is. And, you know, I think our two centre-halves tonight, you know, Johnny Evans and Soyuncu, you know, they will be chatting to each other saying, you know, we've got to keep an eye on this guy because he makes really, really good runs. He's not afraid to go in behind. I've always liked centre forwards like Jamie Vardy that play on the shoulder. You call it playing on the shoulder. In other words, you try and get level with that last defender and then you use your pace to get in. And he's a very, very clever centre forward, and he's down there right in front of us now. Like you say, he doesn't look too enthusiastic at the moment, but once that game kicks off, we've got to be very, very wary about him.
He started the season with an absolute bang for Norwich City here at Carrow Road, but then subsequently since then he's maybe not hit the same levels of form that he had earlier in the season, and I guess that coincided with Norwich's poor run of results, and they've not picked up as many points as they did in those opening few games.
No, yeah, it's a fair point, but you know what I also would say as well is if you're scoring goals in a team that is bottom of the Premier League, you're doing something right, because it is hard to score when your team's down the bottom. And I don't think you can. One thing about this Norwich team, Dan, is that I don't think you can say they're playing with a lack of confidence. You know, a lot of the teams sometimes in the Premier League where you see them, they sort of get a bit tailed off and they lose heart, they lose spirit, they lose confidence. I don't see that with this Norwich team. I see a team full of confidence. Ultimately, they might not be good enough to stay in the Premier League, which is a completely different matter. But I don't see a lack of confidence in this Norwich team. But go back to what I was talking about with Pukki. It is hard to score goals when you're down the bottom of the Premier League, and you know you're not. If you're playing in that Man City team at the top of the table, if you're a centre forward like Aguero or Jesus, you might be getting 5-6 chances a game. There's been occasions in the past where Jamie Vardy's had 5 or 6 chances in a game. But for someone like Pukki, sometimes you're living on the scraps and you don't get 5 or 6 chances. You might get 1 or 2 chances, and you've got to take those chances because that is the only ones you're going to get, and they're so important to your team. So that's what I like about Pukki. He's a dangerous player. He's a very good finisher, and as I said, we cannot afford to give him too much space and time tonight, because if he gets in on goal, invariably he scores.
Well, let's get the view then of a man who watches Norwich week in, week out. This is Phil Daly from BBC Radio Norfolk, and he says that spirits are still fairly high amongst the fans here at Carrow Road, despite being bottom of the Premier League.
Well, it's really difficult because arguably their worst performance of the season last Sunday against Wolves. So really, it's what kind of character Norwich have got, because they've played pretty well against some of the top teams this season, Wolves excluded, and plenty of Norwich fans will be remembering the game against Leicester last time out, where they put up a really good show of things. Last time here at Carrow Road, they were against Liverpool, and once again gave themselves a pretty good chance of a point until very late on. So it's which Norwich City we see this evening, the one that looks like it's bottom of the table, or the one that's actually played pretty well most of the year and feels like it should be higher. The main thing is Norwich have been really pleasing on the eye. So for most fans and most away fans as well, they'll say, blimey, that doesn't look like a side that should be bottom of the league. But getting the ball in the back of the net, and more crucially, stopping the ball going in the back of your own net, is where problems have been. Norwich have really spent very little money last summer especially, and then in the January transfer window, and Norwich fans are starting to worry what might happen at the end of this season. That kind of hope of staying up is starting to run out a bit. Well, obviously Timo Pukki, he's the man that most people always have their eye on. He's the one who has scored all the goals for Norwich City this season. Sadly, I think the pressure has finally got to him because there's not enough people chipping in around him. Be interesting to see if Femi Buendia starts tonight. He was left out in the game against Wolves. He was injured a game or two before that, but the fans are crying out to see him back in the starting lineup, because when he's on song, he's absolutely genius in that midfield, but he does have a habit of giving the ball away, normally to someone who goes on and scores against them. So it's the good and the bad of Femi Buendia. If we see the good of him, it'll be an exciting player to watch.
For more in-depth analysis, reaction and extended highlights, head to lcfc.com.
Thanks to Phil Daly there from BBC Radio Norfolk. He underlined, obviously, Timo Pukki with the goals, and then Femi Buendia has been someone who can unlock defences, Tony. We're just watching the Norwich City warm-up, and the man who's on the ball currently, Todd Cantwell, always appears to be wanting the ball and trying to run everything, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He looks a very confident player. He's got the old Alice band in like James Maddison had, like maybe he's learned from him. But yeah, just watching the warm-up there, it was all revolving around him. He wanted the ball, getting on the ball. It was like, I'm feeling comfortable in this role. I am one of the star players, and that, and you get that air of confidence and arrogance about him, which you need to be a top player. You need that. As I said earlier, I think their biggest problem, Norwich, is keeping Todd Cantwell. I'm sure there'll be many teams that are watching him at the moment, the top teams. And, if they do go down, which I think they will do, ultimately, as I said, because I don't think they're quite good enough. It won't be for a lack of trying, that's for sure. But if they're not good enough and they do go down, there's going to be many suitors for Todd Cantwell. And you get the feeling and the impression he's only going to get better. He's only a young kid, and he's improving all the time in every game.
It's interesting what you said there about the confidence and the arrogance sometimes of players, but you said that's an important thing. If you're going to be a top player, you've got to have that. But how fine is the line between arrogance and confidence and then too much of that?
Well, I think that the problem you can get sometimes is if you get too confident and arrogant at the same time, either individually or as a team. And as soon as that happens, I think individually, if it happens, I think certainly in the old days, you'd have a few people in the changing room who certainly would be knocking you down a peg or two, especially if you are a young kid. And we're talking, about Todd Cantwell. I used the words confidence and arrogance in talking about him. And when you're talking about a young kid like that, you would expect the senior players, someone like a Grant Hanley, for example, to, he's the captain. You would just have a quiet word and knock him down a peg or two. And then, of course, the problem as well is if you get too confident and too arrogant as a team, and you go out, like what I've already said, as a Leicester team, you're too overconfident, you're too arrogant. We're Leicester, we're third, we win this easy. And you then get knocked down a peg or two. And football has got you know, it's done it all throughout the years to every team, even the top teams in world club football, international football. You're going into games fully expecting to win, and you come off at the end of it thinking, how have we lost that game? And there is a fine line, you're right, Dan, and you just got to try and get the balance right, and that's the difficult thing. And you know, that key word that we look to use and you look for every football club is consistency. And you know, we're looking at the team that's top of the Premier League at the moment. You've got to say they are the most consistent team, Liverpool, because they're winning all their games, and that's what it's all about. Are they confident? Yeah. Are they arrogant? Yeah. But there is that consistency, and I think that's where the other Premier League teams are just struggling a little bit in terms of consistency. You could argue that Leicester have been very consistent this year, Sheffield United have been consistent this year, but teams like Norwich have really struggled with consistency. So it's about getting that blend and balance right.
Norwich City, the host this evening here at Carrow Road, are 7 points adrift of safety at the bottom of the Premier League. But their manager, Daniel Farke, said he wants his players to take confidence from their performance at King Power Stadium earlier in the season.
Leicester's quite good in their pressing. I think this topic that we are brave and also capable to bypass their pressing. It was also unbelievably important here, because they always are strong in the centre. They like to overload the centre. They have quality players who can play the finishing pass in the centre. That we are pretty compact in the centre. That we are good, especially in these topics, to take the key players of them also a bit out of the game, and that we are unbelievably solid and compact. We were quite good in these topics in the first game. I would say we were, especially in the first half, pretty close. Also more like to win this game.
So he talked about that game, and he talked about being compact in midfield. He was very impressed with the job they did at King Power Stadium, but they were also quite expansive. It wasn't as if they came and sat back and scored early and then thought, right, let's hold what we have. They still went forward, which I guess is what the fans have liked this season, and probably the reason maybe why the fans haven't really been grumbling. Normally you see a team that are bottom of the league by this much, the fans could start turning on the team, but they haven't done here.
No, they haven't, and I think there's quite a few reasons for that. I think, you know, there's quite a few young players in this team, and as I spoke about with the Leicester fans earlier, I think the Norwich fans expect and like the players to come through the academy, so they're a little bit more patient. We just heard from Daniel Farke there. You know, he's a very, very good manager. He knows his stuff. I like him. I've interviewed him after games, Dan, and he comes across as a really nice guy, and he's always got a smile on his face, and you know, he's getting his team to try and play in the right way. But you know, you're right. Norwich will try and take the game to Leicester. They will try and be expansive. They won't just sit back and allow Leicester to take them on as in attack v defence. And I think that's what the fans like here. They like a certain style of football. They want their team to play well. They want their team to entertain and that. And you know, lots of games have ended up with lots of goals. But we just checked the stats there, didn't we? And the games that Norwich have lost, you know, they're not been by loads and loads of goals. Yeah, of course, maybe against the occasional one against one of the top teams, but invariably it's like a 1-0 or a 2-1, and they're only losing by the one goal, which means that they're always in the game. And you know, if you're always in the game, you've always got a chance of nicking a point and that. But Norwich, quite simply, are in the position now, I think, where if they've got any ideas about staying in the Premier League, a draw is no good to them. A defeat is certainly not good for them, but a draw is not good enough. They need to get the 3 points, and that should make it an exciting game.
Yeah, we had Ewan Roberts on this week's episode of Extra Time on LCFC Radio on Monday. Obviously, you do a lot for us, Tony, and he was obviously an ex-player here at Norwich. There's a picture of him up in the press room down here, but he was looking at the points they got. They've got 18 points from 27 games. If they realistically want to stay up, they're going to have to double the points total, at least, that they're on, with only 11 games to go. It is a mammoth task at this stage.
Well, it is. I mean, you're looking at, you know, I personally think it will be maybe 38 points. It might be a fraction higher. Normally you can get away with about 34 or 35 points. I think this year it does seem to be a little bit closer and a bit more congested down the bottom, Norwich excluded. But, you know, if you've got to get to 38 points, you know, for Norwich to get 20 points out of their remaining, 11 games, I mean, you know, you're talking, that's European form, really. They almost need like 6 wins and, you know, 2 or 3 draws, really, just to get them to that 38 points, to give them a chance of survival. It's highly unlikely. I can't see it happening, but you never know in football. You know, listen, we've only got to look at our club, Leicester, and see how they escaped, didn't they? I mean, they had that wonderful run at the end of the season, and it was all doom and gloom. They're going down, etc., and they survived. It can happen, and with 11 games left, I would never write off anyone, particularly this Norwich team, because they've got some good players. But go back to what I just said to you, Norwich have to win this football match tonight.
Well, the Leicester fans that are opposite us here have travelled in very good number here to Norfolk. We'll be hoping Norwich don't do that, of course. They're celebrating a year in charge. Well, Brendan Rodgers is celebrating a year in charge. Those fans have certainly been celebrating for that year, and he was asked about that year in charge of the Foxes so far.
Well, all the games are difficult games, and Norwich have shown that they're a dangerous team. We've seen that when we drew here earlier on in the season. They're a good side. They've got creative players. They're a dangerous team to play against, and especially at home where they've had some very good results. You know, I've seen their performance against Liverpool, or one of their last games at home, and they played very, very well. So for us, we know it's going to be a tough game, but we're off the back of a good performance. Not quite the result that we wanted against Manchester City, but there was a lot of pleasing aspects of our game that, in terms of our intensity and our aggression in the game, and if we take that into our last 11 games, then we think we can do okay.
Well, that wasn't Brendan talking about his year in charge. We'll hear that in just a moment, Tony, but he was talking about this game and particularly coming off the back of that Manchester City game, because you could see how disappointed he was at full time with not getting result, not getting at least a point against Man City, which a lot of people thought Leicester were good for that evening.
Yeah, I agree with that, and you know, you could argue that in a lot of the games this season against certainly against the top two, I think, you know, we spoke before, unlucky at Anfield, at the Etihad, they certainly gave Man City a game as well. So I think Brendan will be a little bit disappointed that, you know, they just didn't get the lucky breaks and didn't get the points against the top two teams. Listen, at the end of the season, you're going to look at many games and say, oh, well, if only we'd have scored one more goal, if only we'd have drawn that one, and that's just how it is, and not every single team will do that. But, you know, I think Brendan made the point there about Norwich, wasn't he? He was talking about it, exactly what I've said, you know, not to underestimate them and expect a good performance from this Norwich team. And for Leicester just to put that game behind them last week, yes, it was a disappointing result and they could have got a draw. But, you know, just they need a win, Leicester. You know, I think it's fair to say it's been a bit of an inconsistent run, hasn't it? Certainly since probably like around about Christmas, New Year time. So they need to get a win, and if they do get that win, go into that run of fixtures we've already spoke about, then they can really look to push on and get some points on the board come the end of the season.
And they've absolutely got a man in charge in Brendan Rodgers who knows what it takes to win. In all competitions, he obviously has done that wherever he has been. Obviously at Liverpool in that title charge, it didn't quite go the way he wanted at the end. He went up to Celtic and just won. As simple as that. He just won games of football in every single competition. So he knows what it's like. He'll be in that dressing room right now, being able to tell the players, listen, this is what we need to do on nights like this.
Yeah, he will. And, you know, Brendan's a very experienced coach now. He had a lot of success in terms of winning trophies in Scotland. Very nearly won the Premier League with Liverpool. Should have won the Premier League with Liverpool. Went very, very close. You know, for me, he's a manager who brings everything to the table. He's a modern-day manager, and you know, I've said many, many times before, I really like Brendan. I like what he'd done before he arrived at Leicester. You just spoke about it. I think, is it a year anniversary? Is it coming up then, or is it already just been right? So, you know, he's transformed the club, and he's given everyone hope again at Leicester that they can try and rise to the giddy heights of what was achieved 4 years ago. And you know, those fans, I'm just looking at it now, I mean, earlier there was about 50 people in the stand. There's probably about nearly 2,000 already Leicester fans in that stand, and they will be excited and looking forward to the match. And they've got belief, and they know that they've got a manager who is a winner and will going to hopefully take Leicester to great heights come the end of the season.
Well, let's hear from Brendan Rodgers then, who's been assessing his year in charge of the Foxes.
When you come in as a manager, it's to continue to develop and grow the club, and that's all we've tried to do since we've come in. Players have been brilliant. Support around the club for me has been fantastic, and that gives you obviously the freedom to work. So yeah, our job was to come in and look at the identity of the team and try and bring a game that the supporters can enjoy watching, and ultimately allow the team to succeed. So we have still a lot of work to do, but the first year, the players have been absolutely first class.
I guess, Tony, that Brendan Rodgers will not have been expecting to be where he is after his first year in charge. If he was to map out and plan out what he'd like to achieve in his time here, it's probably been escalated and brought forward, hasn't it, with the way that they've played this season so
Yeah,
far.
absolutely. I agree with that. I don't know, only Brendan can really tell us, you know, come the end of the season, what he was realistically expecting. I expected Leicester to challenge certainly for 7th and possibly for 6th if they had a good season. That's what I was expecting. You know, I would have put my 2 other clubs, old clubs, Everton and West Ham, in that same category. You know, I know they've had disappointing seasons, but that's really where we was looking for Leicester to be. So to be sitting in 3rd place, you know, 9 points clear of Manchester United in 5th, it's been extraordinary. It really has. Great run to the League Cup semi-final. Got the FA Cup coming up in midweek. You know, a chance to progress in that to get to the quarterfinals as well. And I don't think Brendan would have expected that. Yes, you always think, oh, it could go well. You always think that, because you've got to be optimistic. If you don't think you're going to do well, there's no point in even like bothering to start a football match. So he would have expected that things might have gone well, but not as well as what they have done. He'll be. I know he can't say at the moment, because you've got to be careful and you can't get too carried away, but he would be absolutely delighted with how things have gone so far. But you can quite easily undo all that work done, and that's what I keep emphasising. You've got to keep building. You've got to do it week in, week out, and Leicester have just got to go on a little run now. And if they get into that top 4, which I still expect them to do, at the end of the season we can say, wow, manager of the season, Brendan's got to be in contention for that, and that's how good a season they will have had.
The pyrotechnics have started here at Carrow Road. I just looked to our left-hand side. There's hundreds of yellow and green flags being waved. There's similar blue and white flags being waved in the opposite stand. The Leicester fans opposite here are well up for this game here in the Premier League this Friday evening. Kasper Schmeichel is preparing to lead the Foxes out. He's in the tunnel ready. We're ready here on LCFC Radio's Matchday Live. A reminder, if you're listening in on social media, the feed will stop just before kick-off. You just need to head to lcfc.com/radio to hear every single kick of this clash available for free. But it is indeed now time to hand you over to your commentary team of Tony Cottee and Chris Parrott.
Madison, oh, that is absolutely brilliant! And it's a beauty. Jamie Vardy again for Leicester City. He's up and running. What a fantastic goal!
Touch, back of the net.
Come on. There's a somersault to celebrate with the travelling Blue Army.
All the games, all the goals, and all the big moments. You're listening to LCFC Radio.
Friday night football live from a scorching Carrow Road as Leicester City meets Norwich. With only 10 Premier League games to go after this, the final countdown is on the horizon. Can the Champions League chasing Foxes pick up 3 more important points? It is a foul night weather-wise. We've had pyrotechnics, which have kept us warm here. It's a full house, the floodlights are on. Can Leicester City beat the Premier League's basement boys and take another step closer to securing a top 4 finish? The 2 sets of players are out, shaking hands. A couple of thousand Leicester fans opposite us here with their blue and white 3 flags, waving them loud and proud. Norwich still believe the great escape is possible, but if they are to do it themselves, they need to start picking up points very, very soon. Tony Cottee is alongside myself, Chris Parrott. Last time we were together on a Friday, it was miserable.
I knew you was going to mention that.
It was pouring with rain, and Leicester scored 9. We're not expecting that tonight, but it is another huge game and a contest they'll back themselves to win.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, I must admit I enjoyed the pyrotechnics because it warmed me up, because there was a bit of warmth come off them there. Was it? It's not particularly warm here. Unlike in the old days when it was raining and the pitch was all muddy and everything, the pitch is fantastic. The rain's falling down. It's going to be a really slick surface, and I'm not expecting 9 goals tonight, but I am expecting a Leicester victory. But it is going to be a tough game. But Leicester can make that easier for themselves if they do the basics right, if they defend well and do what they're really good at, which is hitting teams on the counter-attack. You know, I think Leicester will win the game, but they've really got to be on it. This is going to be a tough game tonight, make no bones about that. A really, really tough game.
Well, this stadium is crackling here. It is always a full house. Even when Norwich were in League One a few years ago, they sold out Carrow Road week in, week out. As Grant Hanley, the Norwich captain, makes his way from the Norwich team talk and strides towards the referee Craig Pawson, and in a moment he'll shake hands with Kasper Schmeichel for the toss of the coin. This is the team news. From Leicester's point of view, it's very interesting. No Jamie Vardy, not on the bench. He's out with a calf injury. It's called a low-grade injury, hopefully back next week. His place up front goes to Kelechi Iheanacho. This is the 11. Schmeichel in goal, a back four of Ricardo, Soyuncu, Evans and Chilwell. Pratt, the returning Chowdhury from suspension, and the former Norwich boy Maddison in midfield, with Perez and Barnes either side of Iheanacho. Wilfred Ndidi is back tonight, but on the bench. For Norwich City, one change from their defeat at Wolves last time out. Emi Buendia comes in for Lucas Rupp. They've got Tim Krul in goal, back four of Max Aarons, Ben Godfrey, Grant Hanley the captain, and Jamal Lewis. Kenny McLean and Alex Tetty the holding midfielders, with Buendia, Andre Duda and young Todd Cantwell behind top scorer Timu Pukki. The club song on the ball. City rings around Carrow Road and we're ready for action. And it is going to be James Maddison to get this game underway.